Look at this beautiful lake house, Margaret gushed, passing her iPad around the dinner table. 10 bedrooms, private dock, and the most gorgeous sunset views. Thomas and I are thinking of making an offer next week. She paused, shooting me one of her signature condescending smiles. Of course, some of us can only dream of such properties. My name is Emma Stevens, and at 34, I'd spent the last 5 years tolerating my mother-in-law's constant jabs about my modest lifestyle. Tonight's family dinner was no different, with Margaret showcasing her expensive taste while reminding everyone, especially me, of our supposed social differences. The realtor says it's the most prestigious property on Lake Windsor, she continued, practically glowing. Only select people are even being shown the listing. I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. The property she was swooning over was indeed spectacular. I should know, I'd signed the papers for it last week. Speaking of properties, Margaret turned to me, her voice dripping with fake concern. James tells me you're still driving that old Honda. Wouldn't you rather have something more appropriate for our family's image? My husband James shifted uncomfortably beside me but remained silent. He'd learned long ago that intervening in his mother's attacks only made things worse. My car works just fine, I replied calmly, cutting into my steak. I'd learned to let Margaret's comments roll off my back, knowing something she didn't. That's the problem with your generation, she sighed dramatically. No ambition, no understanding of social status. When I was your age, I was already organizing charity galas and serving on museum boards. Mom, James finally interjected, but Margaret wasn't finished. I mean, really, when was the last time you even attended a proper social function? The country club membership we offered you for parties still sits unused. It's like you're determined to remain. She paused, her lips curling slightly. Poor trash. The table fell silent. Even Margaret's usual enablers, my father-in-law Thomas and sister-in-law Kate, looked uncomfortable. I set down my fork, meeting Margaret's gaze. Actually, I've been quite busy with property investments lately. She laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Oh, finally renting a better apartment? No, I said, reaching for my phone. Actually, I just closed on a lake house. Would you like to see it? Margaret's perfectly manicured hand froze halfway to her wine glass. You bought a lake house. I pulled up the photos on my phone, the same ones she'd just been showing everyone. But these included me signing the final papers in the realtor's office. Yes, that one you've been talking about. The sunset views really are spectacular, especially from the master bedroom. The color drained from Margaret's face as she stared at the photos. That's impossible. The realtor said it was only being shown to select clients. I know, I smiled. I was one of them. But how? Margaret sputtered, her composure cracking. You work at a nonprofit. You drive a Honda. You can't possibly afford. Remember that little blog you mocked at party? I asked, referring to my sustainable living website. It turns out quite a few people are interested in learning about conscious consumption and investment strategies. The book deal and speaking engagements didn't hurt either. James reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it gently. He kept my secret all these months, supporting my decision to let his mother's assumptions about me continue until the perfect moment. I don't believe you, Margaret declared, but her voice trembled slightly. Show me the deed. I pulled the document up on my phone, sliding it across the table. You'll notice the closing date was last Thursday. I was actually going to invite everyone up next weekend for a housewarming, but since you're so familiar with the property already. Margaret stared at the deed, her hands shaking. The lake house she'd been bragging about, the one she'd been planning to lord over me as another symbol of her superiority, was mine. All those times she'd shown me photos, asking if I could even imagine living in such luxury, I'd been signing the final papers. This is, she couldn't seem to find the words. Poor trash moves up in the world, doesn't it? I said softly, taking my phone back. Now, about that housewarming. The week following the dinner revelation was deliciously chaotic. Margaret launched a full-scale investigation into my purchase, calling every real estate agent in the Lake Windsor area. She even had Thomas reach out to his banking connections, trying to prove I must have acquired the property through questionable means. What she discovered only made things worse. For her. Not only had I purchased the lake house legitimately, but I'd also paid in cash, thanks to the success of my sustainable living empire. The little blog she'd mocked had grown into a multimedia platform with over 2 million followers. My first book, Living Rich on Less, had hit the bestseller list 3 months ago, and my speaking tour was already sold out in 12 cities. Mrs. Stevens, my assistant called, interrupting my thoughts. Your mother-in-law is here again. I looked up from my laptop to see Margaret storming into my office, her designer handbag swinging wildly. You did this on purpose, she accused, her face flushed. You let me go on and on about that house, knowing you'd already bought it. Please have a seat. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, maintaining my composure. Would you like some tea? It's a special blend I featured in last month's sustainability box. Don't patronize me, she snapped, but sat anyway. You humiliated me in front of everyone. No, Margaret, I corrected gently, you humiliated yourself. 5 years of calling me poor trash, mocking my career choices, and undermining my contributions to the family. I just finally let you see how wrong you've been. She flinched at her own words being thrown back at her. But why keep it a secret? Why not just tell us about your success? Would you have believed me? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Or would you have found some way to diminish it like you've done with everything else? Margaret opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. We both knew the answer. The housewarming is this weekend, I continued, pulling out an elegant invitation. You're welcome to come, though I understand if you'd rather not. She stared at the invitation, her perfectly manicured fingers tracing the embossed lettering. Everyone will be there. Yes, including the Hamiltons and the Whitneys. I named 2 families she'd been desperately trying to impress for years. They're particularly interested in my sustainable investing workshop. Margaret's eyes widened. The Hamiltons and Whitneys were Lake Windsor royalty, the kind of people she'd always bragged about almost knowing. And now they were coming to my event. I don't have anything to wear, she said weakly, her usual confidence crumbling. Actually, I reached into my desk drawer. I had my stylist put together some options for you. All sustainable brands, of course. The car will pick you up at noon on Saturday. She took the lookbook, her hands trembling slightly. Why are you being nice to me, after everything I've said? Because that's who I am, Margaret. The same person I've always been. The one you never took the time to know. As she left my office, clutching the lookbook and invitation, I saw something I'd never seen before in my mother-in-law: respect. That evening, James found me on our terrace, going over final details for the housewarming. Mom called, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. She actually apologized. Well, sort of. She said she might have misjudged you. I laughed. From Margaret, that's practically a declaration of love. You know, he continued, you could have told her about your success ages ago. Shut her up way earlier. True, I agreed, but then she wouldn't have learned anything. Sometimes people need to see their own prejudices play out to understand how wrong they've been. James kissed my cheek. You're kind of brilliant, you know that? I do, I smiled. By the way, your mother asked for the link to my blog. Said she wanted to understand what all the fuss was about. Now that's a miracle, James chuckled. As we stood there watching the city lights, I thought about the upcoming housewarming. Margaret would be there, probably still struggling with her new reality. But she'd come. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally see me for who I really was, not poor trash, but a woman who'd built something meaningful while staying true to her values. The lake house wasn't just a property, it was a symbol of everything she dismissed about me. Every snide comment about my car, every mocking reference to my work, had only fueled my determination to succeed on my own terms. What are you thinking about? James asked, noticing my smile. Just imagining your mother's face when she sees what I've done with her dream house, I replied. Wait until she discovers the solar panels and organic garden. We both laughed, knowing the best part of my revenge wasn't in proving her wrong. It was in showing her a better way to live. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, the kind that made Lake Windsor look like it belonged on a postcard. I'd spent the morning with my team, ensuring everything was perfect for the housewarming. The sustainable furniture we chosen complemented the home's natural beauty, and the organic catering setup looked stunning on the lakeside patio. At precisely noon, I watched from the master bedroom window as Margaret arrived. She'd chosen one of the sustainable designer outfits I'd suggested, a cream silk dress made from recycled materials. She looked uncertain, a far cry from her usual commanding presence. The Hamiltons and Whitneys just pulled up, James announced, joining me at the window. Ready for the grand finale? I smoothed down my own dress. A simple but elegant design from my sustainable fashion line. Absolutely. As guests filled the sprawling lake house, I couldn't help but notice how Margaret hovered on the periphery, watching as the social elite she'd always tried to impress flocked around me, eager to hear about my sustainable living philosophy. "Emma, darling," Elizabeth Hamilton called out, air kissing my cheeks. "You must tell everyone about your amazing rooftop garden project. We're all dying to implement something similar." I caught Margaret's expression, a mixture of disbelief and dawning realization. These were her people, the social circle she'd always claimed I couldn't possibly understand or belong to. Yet here they were, hanging on my every word. "Actually," I said, loud enough for Margaret to hear, "my mother-in-law was one of my earliest inspirations." All eyes turned to Margaret, who nearly dropped her champagne glass. Her strong opinions about traditional success made me think deeply about what really matters. I continued, walking over to her. It inspired me to find a different way, to show that luxury and sustainability aren't mutually exclusive. Margaret's eyes glistened with unexpected tears. "Emma, would you like to help me give the tour?" I asked, extending an olive branch. "You know the house's layout by heart after all." For a moment, she just stared at me. Then, straightening her shoulders, she nodded. "I'd be honored." As we led guests through the house, I watched Margaret transform. She listened intently as I explained the sustainable features of each room, genuinely engaging with the concepts she'd once dismissed. When we reached the kitchen, her eyes widened at the state-of-the-art composting system and energy-efficient appliances. "This is remarkable," she admitted, running her hand along the recycled glass countertop. "It's nothing like I imagined sustainable living would be." "That's the point," I smiled. "Luxury isn't about waste. It's about making conscious choices." The afternoon flowed into evening, and as the sunset painted the lake in brilliant oranges and pinks, I found Margaret alone on the dock. "You've done something extraordinary here," she said as I sat beside her. "Not just with the house, but with everything. I was wrong about you, Emma. So very wrong." "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot. I kept trying to force you into my idea of success." She continued, "never seeing that you were creating something far more meaningful. The way these people respect you, not for your money or status, but for your ideas." "It's never too late to change perspectives," I offered. "My next book is about transforming traditional luxury into sustainable luxury. I could use your input actually. Your experience with traditional luxury living could offer valuable insights." Her eyes lit up. "You'd want my help?" "After everything I've said and done." "The past is the past," I said. "What matters is where we go from here." Later that night, after the last guest had left, James found me in the master bedroom, watching the moonlight dance on the lake. "Well, that was quite a day," he said. "I've never seen Mom so humble." "People can surprise you," I replied. "Sometimes they just need the right motivation to change." "Speaking of surprises," he grinned, "did you tell her about the sustainable living center you're building next door?" I laughed, one shock at a time. "Besides, I think she might actually want to help with that project now." And she did. Over the next year, Margaret became one of my strongest advocates, throwing herself into learning about sustainable living with the same passion she'd once devoted to social climbing. She even started her own blog about transitioning from traditional luxury to sustainable luxury, sharing her journey with others who, like her, needed to learn that true wealth isn't about impressing others. It's about creating something meaningful. The lake house became a regular gathering place for family dinners, but now they were different. Instead of subtle jabs and social competition, there was genuine conversation and shared purpose. Margaret never again used the words "poor trash." Instead, she became known in our circle as the elegant grandmother of sustainable living. As for me, I kept the Honda. Some things don't need to change to prove their worth.